What is up, you guys? Naesam here, and this is going to be the second Elerethe Shaman boss specific guide for Emerald Nightmare. This one's going to be on Elerethe Renferal, but you probably already know that. So just to be clear, once again, like I said in my last video, this is going to be like from an Elerethe Shaman's point of view. If you're looking for our actual boss guide to use for your guild or whatever, this is not the place to look. This is just for shamans who want to know like what talents to take, when to use what, timing of cooldowns, all that other stuff. So now that that's out of the way, we're going to get started on the actual guide itself. So unlike Nathendra, this boss is very, for Elerethe Shamans anyway, it's very similar on Heroic and Mythic for what talents and stuff to use, so I'm going to kind of condense this guide into more of like a streamlined thing. But for context, I'm going to briefly explain the Mythic strat that can also be used on Heroic. So you'll be seeing a map on your screen right now. On the bottom left one is the platform that she starts on. The bottom right one is the platform you enter on. So obviously you have to start on the platform she starts on. The order is bottom left, bottom right, top. And you start, or well, you don't have to do this, but our guild, we started on the dark blue circle. For feeding time, we all use a speed boost, ran all the way to the other side. And then after the next feeding time, we ran all the way back, and then she changes forms. Some people will get chains, and if you get this, our strat, you go along like the edge, the red line, to avoid knocking people around, and you also have to coordinate with the other person to use cooldowns or you'll die. Like the first one you'll say, hey other person, I'm going to use Astral Shift on this, you get the next one. And that way you can take as little damage as possible. That's probably the best time to use Astral Shift, is if you get chains. And then obviously, if you're looking at the map, you probably already read this, but Necrotic Venom is going to be in the blue, or not the blue, the green areas, and Tornadoes would go into the purple areas. And that goes for everything that's purple and green on the map. And as you probably know if you're going to Mythic, the boss, or the spiders need to be tanked away from the boss, so we brought a third tank. And we just had whichever tank was not chained take the spiders away from the boss. I'm not sure if that's a common strat or not, I don't really know. But that made it really easy to DPS them effectively as a shaman, which I'll go into later. And then she flies up in the air and stuff and goes to the next platform. On that platform, I did the same basic thing, and we also heroed with 3-minute cooldowns on the second Violent Winds, because that's when we had one tank solo tanking it. I think I don't really know. I'm not a tank, but no one was really being stopped from DPSing, and 3-minute cooldowns were coming up at the same time, so that's when we used hero. Then we got to the third platform, and she was almost already dead, so we just kind of YOLO'd it. We put green and Tornadoes on the opposite sides for that. That's kind of a guild-specific thing. But yeah, this is the strat in a nutshell. So now I'm going to go into the talents. As usual, tier 15, Path of Flame is not really an option. Earth and Rage and Totem Mastery are about equal. If you are using Lightning Rod, I would definitely suggest going with Totem Mastery, otherwise you can go with either. Tier 30, once again as usual, Gust of Wind is really useful, especially for getting out of feeding time and getting Necrotic Venom like on the opposite side of the room. Ancestral Guidance is pretty much completely useless here because there's no big DPS phases that you're not constantly moving around. And Windrush Totem is incredibly useful here for the feeding times. So, like, you would alternate one totem here, then Stampeding Roar the next one, or whatever. That's up to your guild. If they don't request you to do that, then you should probably just go with Gust of Wind, unless you particularly think that people are going to die because they haven't set one up. Tier 45, nothing can really be CC'd, so don't bother. There's no point in worrying about that one. Tier 60, as usual, Elemental Blast is the worst option. Ancestral Swiftness is what I recommend, but Echo of the Elements is also a viable option. Ancestral Swiftness is, like, it actually has a lead on this one, though, because of the AoE. Tier 75, Elemental Fusion is by far the worst, as always. Primal Elementalist is the best option, and Ice Fury, it might have uses, but the main movement phase, you can't reach the boss, and most movement is either unpredictable, or there's something else you can do, like in feeding times you can dot the spiders and stuff, you don't need Ice Fury, so I would go with Primal Elementalist. Tier 90, Elemental Mastery is the best option. Storm Elemental is obviously, as usual, not good. Aftershock is also not really useful because there's not enough flame shotting and there's not enough earthquaking. Tier 100, both Ascendance and Lightning Rods are really good options. Ascendance is more consistent due to how much you're like running from platform to platform. There's lots of downtime for Lightning Rod. But if the spiders are lasting like a long time, like your DPS on the spiders is really bad, or if your guild DPS on the spiders is really bad, then Lightning Rod could be an option there. But overall, it's going to be a lot less consistent, and you're kind of just hoping that it procs at the right time. Otherwise, it's not really going to be very good. And if you're heroing with 3-minute cooldowns, then I would definitely recommend going Ascendance. So now for some specific tips for like timings and stuff. So on pole, you have about 20 seconds before the first feeding time, so you want to use your Ascendance and Elemental Mastery, but you do not want to use your Stormkeeper, because feeding time is going to come out, and you want to use it on the spiders. You also want to save your Gust of Wind for feeding time, obviously. Wait for the green circle to appear before moving, or you could wipe your raid. On Heroic, I don't think that matters, but on Mythic, you definitely don't want to wipe, because you decided to jump early, and you got the web further out, or whatever it does. While moving to like the next location during feeding time, you always want to keep doing something. Like, you always want to keep your actions up. So what I have usually been doing is I dump my Maelstrom with either an Earthquake where I think the spiders are going to be tanked, or the safer route, but just by throwing an Earth Shock and then Flame Shocking all the spiders until I'm done moving. Then I also cast Stormkeeper while I'm moving if the spiders are trying to get stacked. And then another thing to do with Stormkeeper is that you always want to save it for feeding time. Stormkeeper single target is pretty underwhelming, but Stormkeeper on AoE, especially if you get some overloads or a static overload, is extremely powerful. You can global those spiders if you get a good static overload. So you always want to save it. So it took me a while to find when to use Stormkeeper and when to save it, because feeding time comes out at a pretty awkward time to Stormkeeper. So if the spiders are dying kind of slow, what I would recommend is, as you start running for feeding time, you can use your Stormkeeper early, and then it will come back up for the second one as you're AoEing, and you might get a couple casts in with it, because the second one is the last one for a while, and then she goes into rock form, and then she flies across the platform, so you want to get that second one on AoE. So I'm not sure if the video I have in the background had me doing that or not, but I would recommend, if you think it's going to be an increase, you should probably pop it early. And another thing, sometimes the feeding time timer is going to go away, and that is because she is in rock form, which means she will not be casting it in that form. So if you want to know about when feeding time is going to come up, you have to look for spider form or arachnid form on your DBM timers. She usually does feeding time about 15, somewhere between 10 and 20 seconds after switching back to spider form on the second platform. So usually, after the second feeding time, you can use another Stormkeeper on the first platform and another Stormkeeper on the second platform, and then from there on, then you want to save it for feeding time. But I'm not exactly sure how timings line up with different DPS and stuff. I don't know if it's DPS or percent based or whatever. And then, lastly, if you hero with 3-minute cooldowns like our guild, then it is recommended to save your Elemental Mastery and your Potion to use with Ascendance and Hero. About that time, you'll also be getting your Fire Elemental back during Hero, so that's good. But, yeah, basic tips is you want to save your cooldowns for the Hero, because with potions and stuff, having all that at once is really, really powerful. So to quickly summarize the important things I learned while progressing, save or use all your cooldowns on pole, but not Stormkeeper. You want to save that. Save Stormkeeper for feeding time every time you possibly can. If using Stormkeeper will have it not up for feeding time, do not use it. While you're moving from one feeding time to the next, from where feeding time happened to the next location, make sure you're using Flame Shock on the adds, dropping Earthquakes, do whatever you got to do to keep yourself casting. You never want to be not casting. You can also Stormkeeper early and try and get 2 of them in on the first 2 feeding times. I'm pretty sure they are 45 seconds apart, and the ads come out a few seconds after they go out. So if you cast it right as feeding time is happening, you can potentially finish up with the cast right as the ads are coming down, probably get all 3 in, and then use the second one before the ads die. And then also, if you're using your hero at 3-minute mark, you want to be using Ascendance, save Elemental Mastery, and save your second potion. if you have any confusion about the Mythic strat, since it looks pretty complicated on paper, I would recommend you go watch the kill video on my channel, because it has commentary and stuff. The video you see in the background is probably going to be the second kill, since I did a lot better on that one, because progression usually makes things worse. But that's going to be it for this video. Next up is Ursoc. If you want to see more from me, go ahead and subscribe. I make Elite Shaman guides for the most part, and like if you like the video. And thanks for watching, everybody. See you guys next time.